Hello and welcome. My name is Chris Shelton, and thank you for joining me for Cooking with Chris. You know, before I became a Qigong master, I was a butcher for over 21 years. That's right, for over 21 years. And back in the day when I first started becoming a butcher, when I did my apprenticeship, we used to get hanging beef back in. And nowadays, unfortunately, a lot of times, most butcher shops get boxed beef in. But back in the day, we got hanging beef in, or hanging cattle, sides of cattle in, as well as lamb and pork. And so I really learned a lot. And, you know, it was really a craftsmanship back in the day. And I was really grateful that I got some specialized training. This gentleman by the name of Wallow. Anyways, Wallow taught me all kinds of things. So today's video, I'm going to show you a couple things. Number one, how to get a ribeye steak off a boneless chuck roast, and how to make a yummy beef chuck stew. All right, so the first thing we're going to do first is we're going to take a look at this boneless chuck roast. Now, this is a choice chuck roast. This is what we call it. It's from the blade end, and see this little piece right here? This is what we call the film. That's actually the fascia that would connect to the blade bone, or the shoulder blade, which is also referred to as the scapula. So this is from the blade cut, or the blade end of the chuck roast. If you were to buy a bone-in chuck roast with the part of the spine attached to it, that blade end is part of that shoulder blade. Now, as you go down further through this chuck roast, what happens is that blade bone then curves, and this is the curvature of that scapula. So that's the difference between a blade cut and 7-bone chuck roast. Also, you could have a blade cut chuck steak and a 7-bone chuck steak as well too. So where does the chuck come from? The chuck comes from the upper shoulder here. So our shoulder blades, this is it. This is this area here. This is where that shoulder blade is. And so because the animal moves and walks all the time, guess what? The muscle tends to be tougher, which means then you have to cook it more slowly. Okay, so this is just a little anatomy 101 as far as where the chuck roast comes from. So any part of the animal that the animal uses the muscle group more, then that meat tends to have to be cooked slower, braised or whatnot. So you have the chuck, which is the shoulder, for example. We have the round steak, which is the hind quarter, which is the leg of the animal, or the glute of the animal. So obviously, like if you have a rump roast, or a sirloin tip roast, or a bottom round roast, or a full cut round steak, chances are you're going to have to cook those more slowly. Okay, so any muscle group that the animal has to use those muscles, cooking suggestion is to slow cook. So that's why a filet mignon is more located into the midsection of the animal. And because you don't see many cattle doing crunches out on pasture, this is a reason why you could sear or pan sear or barbecue a filet mignon steak and not have it become tough on you. So again, this is from the blade end of the chuck, which is the shoulder. What happens with that ribeye muscle, it actually goes down to a tail into the shoulder itself. So the first couple of cuts from a chuck roast, probably about 2.5, 3 inches thick, what happens is that you still have part of that ribeye as part of the chuck. So guess what? We call it a chuck eye steak, and it tastes just like, and it cooks just like a ribeye, and it's a lot cheaper. We're talking like $3.99 a pound as opposed to up to $17.99 a pound. So this is, you can always have, if you can't find it yourself, you can always ask your butcher at the butcher shop to do it. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to follow the muscle here. So I'm just following that all the way around here, and then I'm going to separate it. Okay, so that's going to go in the pot roast, and here we go. I could clean this up if I want to, meaning I could always take a little bit of that extra fat off of there. All right, now I'm going to divide this into two. Now, generally speaking, whenever you do a steak, you want it at least 1 inch thick. So guess what? Here's a little chuck eye, which is equivalent to a ribeye, and you're going to save yourself all kinds of money. It's going to cook up just like a ribeye will. So you can throw it on the barbecue, you can throw it onto a hot skillet like that, rub it down with some salt and pepper, and here you go. You got yourself a beautiful chuck eye steak, and you saved yourself all kinds of money. Okay, so we're going to set aside our boneless ribeye steaks that we're going to make in a different time, and right now we're going to jump in to a very quick and simple recipe to make a boneless chuck roast, especially on a cool day like it is here in Los Angeles, California. And by the way, cold in California, Los Angeles, California anyways, is anything below 70 degrees. So it's been really cold because it's been below 70 degrees. We're a bunch of wimps out here. Okay, so I've separated ribeye, or the chuck eye, from this first part. Now if I want to, I could always go ahead and and trim off some of the excess fat here if I want to. Just depends on who you are, and you know, a lot of the stuff will cook down, and honestly the fat adds more flavor, but I'm just going to take off this little bit here. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and rub it down first with salt and pepper. Now, a little trick that I learned from my friend Andre Rush, the White House chef, is that because I hardly ever cook with salt, just because of heart conditions and stuff like that. I do love the flavor of salt, but one of the things I didn't know until doing a little episode with him on the nutritional value of certain foods is that the salt actually will burn off. So it's not like you're going to be eating all this salt. So I'm going to put some salt. I'm going to do both sides. Right now what I'm doing is I'm preheating the skillet as well too at the same time, because I'm going to sear both sides of this chuck roast. Okay, I'm going to flip it over. Okay, a little bit of salt on the other side as well too. So I'm using Himalayan sea salt and black pepper. That's really all you need. And what we're going to do is we're going to pan sear these separately, and then we're going to stick them in the pot. This is 2 cups of organic beef bone broth. We're going to stick it in with our onion, fresh 5 cloves of garlic. Actually, there's 6 cloves of garlic here, and a little bit of thyme and some bay leaves, some tomato paste. It's going to taste really good. All right. So let's see if it's hot enough yet. All I'm doing, I'm not cooking this whole thing. All I'm doing is just searing in the juices. Wow, listen to that sizzle. All right, so we're going to take a look at it right now. It should only be a couple minutes on each side. Again, all we're doing is we're just getting a little brown crispiness on that outside there, which we're starting to see. This is here in the juices, going to add a little extra flavor. And notice here that I have it on about a medium heat, and I have the oven right now preheating to 350 degrees simultaneously. For which then, once I finish brown searing both sides of both pieces of the boneless chuck roast, so we're going to throw it into the pot. We're going to add in our 2 cups of organic beef stock, our thyme, our bay leaves, as well as the onions. We're going to throw it in there with a little can of tomato paste. We're going to let it cook, and so we're going to stir it up and let it cook. And then what's going to happen is we're going to slow cook it at 350, covered for about 3 hours. And at the 3-hour mark, then what's going to happen is we're going to throw in the potatoes and the carrots, because we don't want to overcook the potatoes and the carrots. Okay, so now I'm going to just flip this bad boy, so this should be done. Oh yeah, look at that. Look at that. Wow, it smells so good in here. I'm hungry right now. So according to Chinese nutrition, beef is good. In fact, animal protein is good for anybody who suffers from anemia. So if you have any kind of blood disorders or blood deficiencies, for example, it's always good to eat red meat. Now, I know there's controversy around that. And my recommendation is that always go with grass-fed, organic. Know who is producing and raising the animals, because how the animals are treated and how they are fed is of utmost importance. If you're somebody who has a problem digesting meat, then what I recommend is some grass-fed Wagyu or organic ground meat. And the reason why is because when it's ground like that, it's already broken down, so that way when you eat it, then your stomach doesn't have to work as hard in order to be able to digest it. So again, if you're a vegetarian or whatnot, or vegan or whatnot, then you're probably not going to be watching this video. But if you're somebody who has a blood deficiency, who's weak on energy, or maybe has changed their diet and said, I need to cut meat out of my diet completely. Everybody is like a snowflake, so you can't put all diets together the same. But in general, in clinical practice, with any kind of blood deficiency, low energy, one of the things that we recommend is small amounts of red meat. And especially right now where it's cold in the wintertime, making sure to eat everything that is warm. We want everything to be warm, and the reason why we want everything to be warm is because it's cold outside. We put something cold in our stomach, then our stomachs have to work extra hard. Okay, let's take a look at this, see how it's looking. Okay, I'm going to pull it off, stick it in here. I'm going to go ahead and throw the other one on. All right, so I went ahead and I transferred over, and we pan-seared the bigger piece of the boneless chuck roast. I put in 2 tablespoons of thyme, okay? I'm also now cooking or searing the smaller piece of that boneless chuck roast. I'm going to go ahead and add in my garlic and put that in there. So that's searing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add in my bay leaves, okay? And once again, I have 3 onions, white onions or yellow onions. I have the 2 cups of the bone broth. I have the tomato paste that I'm going to add in here. Oh, that's nice and brown. Look at that crispiness. That's going to taste so good. So it just really adds a unique flavor when you brown it like that, and as opposed to just sticking it into the pot and slow cooking it. I'm going to go ahead and add in the tomato paste. Now they say about 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. I'm not measuring exactly, obviously. Myself, I actually like sauce, so I'm going to put a little bit more of that in there. Mix this all together, mix it all up. Actually going to flip this over, get that thyme off there. So mixing in the tomato paste. I'll just stove here, and then this is nice and brown. Ooh, look at that, that's going to taste delicious. Oh wow, that's going to taste really good. Put that in there. And I'm going to go ahead and dump in my onions. And I'm going to cover it, stick it in the oven at 350. Go ahead and check it, take off the aluminum foil. At that point in time, that's when I'm going to add in my potatoes and my carrots, because we don't want to overcook those, okay? Went ahead and added a little bit more thyme on top of it, and now what's going to happen is that I'm just going to cover this. You can also do this in a crock pot as well too. Cook a little bit slower. Again, any muscle group that the animal uses, you want to make sure to, most of the time you want to slow cook it to have it just fall apart. All right, here we go. The moment of truth. It's been about 4 hours altogether now. Turned down the heat a little bit here. Made some basmati rice for it to go over the top of. Basmati rice, by the way, is very good for your spleen and your pancreas because it's a sweet rice. And we're gonna bring it out right now. Wow, look at that. It looks amazing. Look at that, see? Nice and tender, falling apart. Look at that. Delicious. This is how you want it. Excellent.
Yummy.
Okay, moment of truth.
Okay, moment of truth. Here we go. Nice scoop with the carrot and some meat and some rice. It's hot. Wow.
How was that?
Delightful. And delicious.
And nurturing to your soul?
Love it.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me for Cooking with Chris. I showed you a couple of different techniques today. First of all, I showed you how to save some money by buying a boneless chuck roast from the blade and being able to peel off that muscle on the bottom, which they call it as a chuck eye, but is actually part of the rib eye. It just so happens where they break the chuck from the rib, that muscle comes down into the shoulder, into the chuck. So you save yourself some money. You get 2 nice juicy steaks. As you see here, I'm prepping these. Already put them, rubbed it down with salt and pepper. You go ahead and barbecue those, braise those in a skillet. You could pan fry those. Also showed you a very simple boneless chuck stew or chuck roast recipe that you can make, and very simple to do, especially when it's cold outside. This is a great time of year to have stews and soups, and something that's nurturing to the heart, stomach, and soul. And so until next time, I'm Chris Shelton. I will chi you later.